I'm going to show you how to make an application to control your Arduino using C# and WPF, like this one. Right, so WPF and Forms, they both run on Windows. Right, now the difference between Forms and WPF has a few advantages and Forms has some advantages. Now if you want Forms, I've got a video up in the cards right now which will show you how to do pretty much this exact same thing, but on one of the advantages of WPF is the ability to resize, which is what I like. So you can resize it and it'll stay to scale, so that's always good. You can snap to the boundaries, you can make it full screen, whereas Forms, you can do stuff like that, but it's all got to be coded, whereas WPF, it's already exists for you. You don't have to do any of the coding for that. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so we've started by creating a new project. Now, one of the things to watch out for is you've got two types of WPF apps. You have .NET Framework and .NET. The one that you want is .NET Framework. If you accidentally select .NET, you won't have access to serial devices and things like that. So it's important that you select .NET Framework from the beginning to save you having to redo anything. So we're going to go ahead and select it, hit next. Going to come up with an application name. Alright, select your framework. So I've selected 4.5. Most of them should work, but I'm not guaranteeing any one. But I've just gone 4.5. Let it create. Alright, so to make this video as fast as possible, what I'm going to do is cut and paste in a lot of the code that I've already done. That way it's not a 2-hour long project, but I'll explain to you what it is I'm pasting in. Alright, now this part here is XAML. XAML is a way of coding a display. So with Forms, where you drag stuff on, XAML you got to code it on, but it's not as hard as it seems. You can actually drag some stuff on, but it was actually designed to be coded. So I'll just quickly show you what the different bits are. So up here you've got what your code looks like. Down here you've got your code. So I'm just going to pull this down, give myself some space. Alright, so this bit here is called the grid. Now that's everything inside the grid is what's going to display on here. This main window, we're going to quickly change that one to Arduino display or Arduino demo. And you can see it's changed up here. This height and width, simple. Now let's put some stuff in the grid. So to put stuff in the grid, I'm just going to paste in some stuff. Okay. So you can go ahead and type this in. Now this gives you this will give you more columns. So adding more of these column definitions in will give you more columns to work with. So for every column definition you've got written in here, you give yourself a column. Now this lets you code to specific places on the grid when you do it. So you could say button in column that one and button in column that one, puts them, squares everything up. So if I give myself some more space down here, I'll put in some rows. Rows work exactly the same as columns. Paste. So, alright, so you can see I've got some heights in here. Now what those heights are referring to is in here. So you can either type it in, like height in there, or you can just adjust this. So you can say, so you can click on that and you can type something in. So you can say 2. See how it's quickly changed the size of it, or you can go back to 1. Click out of it and done. So if you do anything but 1, it'll change it. So you can see here, I'll say this is 2.5, and it changes it there. So I'll just put it back to 1.5 to make it nice. So now I want a label across the top. So to do a label across the top, I put in a view box, and inside the view box I want the label. So you got a view box, and I've selected its amount of its column span. So column span means how many across it's going to be. But because I haven't referenced a grid dot row and grid dot column, which you'll see I'll do later on, it automatically defaults to 1 of 1. So it's gone to here, and it's going to come across. Well, it goes to 0, 0. So it puts me up here. Now I'm going to put a button in. Put myself an on button. So you can see you need to put a name in. So you type in x.2 name, and you write what you want. So for me, I'll put on button. I've told it to be in grid 1. I wanted it grid row 1. I want a margin of 10. Now margin of 10 means that gap between the side of the column and the height of the rows, and puts me bang in the middle. So I can actually do 10, 10, 10. It makes no difference, because if I start doing that one, it's off the sides. So I can have 4 individual bits. But if I just want one to be all even, you just have to have one number. Change the background color of the button. So off default, it's going to be light green. So you just go background equals, and start typing, and it will auto write. It's called IntelliSense. It'll auto start to fill out for you. Now this click event, what I've done with that, so if I just quickly delete this one. Alright, I'm going to quickly delete that out. Now what I want to do is, if I go over here, event handlers, if I double click this, it auto codes for me. So it's put some code in. So we're going to do that with all the buttons. We'll do them one at a time. So I'll put another button in. Alright, so I've got my other button. Again, margin of 10. I've said row 1 and grid 1. So row 1. So first row is 0. Second row is 1. First column is 0. Second column is 1. And it goes on like that. So it always starts at 1. It always starts at 0. Whoops. Alright, so the background of this one's light pink. Again, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to get the code written for me by doing this in the properties. Bang. And see, it writes the next bit of code. I'll do the last button now. So look, this is a little bit harder than forms, but you can agree, it's a lot more powerful. You can do a lot more cooler stuff. Alright, so this last button is the connect button. You can see again, row 2, column 1, margin 10, background is light grey. I'm going to delete this click button. Then you won't have the click button to delete if you start typing all this out. And then again, it writes all the code for me to get the button when I push the button. So last thing on here that I want is going to be a combo box. Alright, so you can see I've got this squiggly line. Those squiggly lines underneath means it's got a problem. It's not going to work. So what will happen is this might go blank, but in this case it doesn't. Alright, so again, I'm going to say where I want it. So I want it in row 2. I don't need to specify the column because it's just going to go to the default 0. I want a margin of 3, so it's giving me a nice 3 margin around the middle, around the outside. Alright, so I'll get rid of this. Now to get rid of this, I've got to put a little bit of code up here. So what I'm going to do is bring this down, put an extra line in here, and I'll explain what that does. So this little line here tells it to look for different stuff within the computer, like the ports. Now this last bit is to access the resources, what I'm putting in. So this bit goes in here. Okay, so you can see that I've given it access to some resources. Now these resources, it's given it a method name, it's given it what it's called, it's given it what type it is, so it's the ports of the serial port. Alright, you can see back down here that squiggly line is gone. Now if you've still got a squiggly line there, try run it, or try and restart it, because it should work. Sometimes I've had it not automatically recognized, and usually like a restart of the program or a quick run of the program will get rid of it. Alright, save your progress. Alright, now there's not much left to do here. We've got pretty much everything on the screen that we want, so we'll quickly run it and see what it looks like. So, yep, it's working, it's resizing. If I click on here, I've got my port numbers in there. So this bit here, the binding, that's what fills up the combo box with the ports. So if you don't do this bit, you won't have any ports in there. Simple as that. Alright, now let's go look at the code. Now, I've put this one in here, systems, using system.io.ports. Now that's important to have in there. That gives you access to the serial ports. Rolling down, I'll first do the buttons. So the buttons I'm going to have it's going to have an action, and then when that action happens, it's going to send off a command to the Arduino, and in return it's going to get a command back, and it's going to check if it's a correct command. So what I'll do is I'm going to put in my code for my button, and I'll quickly explain it. Alright, you're going to get some errors because I haven't coded them yet. Alright, so I'll get rid of the squiggly lines. I'll show you what code you put in for that. I'm going to have some. So just quickly put this in as I was going. So this actually, when it boots up, this disables the on and off button. So put that in there, and when you boot your program, they won't be able to work until you connect to the Arduino. If you have them already enabled, so if you put that to true, you'll be able to click the buttons, but the program won't work behind it. Alright, so I'm going to give myself some more space down here. Alright, so what this is doing, this is going to look for the serial port, and it's going to create one for me called Arduino port. And then it's going to say, oh, the new Arduino port is a new serial port that I'm going to use. So here you can see one squiggly line's gone, but I've still got one here. I'm going to put another using in here. So I want to use the system threading namespace. Now that allows me to stop, start, pause the thread. By the thread I mean it's what it's doing. It's thinking, it's loop, you could say, in the Arduino code, but that lets me pause or sleep. So here you can see I've slept. Alright, now to get rid of the response red line, I'm going to declare what the response is. So I'm going to put 2 in because I'm going to use 1 in later. So you can see when it's light grey, it means I haven't used it yet. When it's white, it means it's getting used. Alright, so you can say I've created a string up here and I've called it response. So now response will equal the Arduino port's read line. So I'll quickly go through what's going to happen when you push this button. It's going to get the Arduino port and it's going to write line. So it's going to send a string to the Arduino saying on. The Arduino is going to respond to that and it's going to reply with on. So what I've done is I've sent on. I'm going to sleep for 10 milliseconds. Alright, so there's 1,000 milliseconds to a second, so 10 milliseconds is not long. And then within the response string, I'm going to make it equal what the Arduino port sends back to me. So Arduino port.readline. So that's waiting for it to send something back. So once I've got it something back, I'm going to check if it contains on. So if it contains on, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to disable my on button because it's already pushed, and I'm going to enable my off button so I can turn it off. Alright, so this is all written within this try catch statement. So if this fails to work, alright, it'll catch out and it won't crash the program. Alright, so I'm going to put in the code for the other buttons. Now the other off button is exactly the same, except it's off. So one's enabling, one's disabling. So you can see the difference between this one is I'm sending off, and then I've reversed my trues and falses. Now this one, there's 2 ways you can create strings and use them. I can create it this way, so string response equals, so I can declare it all on that one line, or I can do it this other way and have it outside. Right, this one, doing it this method, it'll only work within this button. Doing this method, I can use it in a couple of different buttons or outside of the button within the application. Alright, so now I'm going to use the click count. Alright, so this looks like a whole heap of stuff, but it's not really. So what I've done is I've created an integer called click count 1 up here. Click count 1. And then down here, what I'm doing is I'm counting how many times the button is pressed, because what I want to happen is I want it to open and close the serial port. Now the reason why I'm opening and closing the serial port outside the on and off buttons is because some Arduinos, when you open and close the port, it will restart the Arduino. So if you're running off your USB power and you do that, it will restart it. And sometimes if you're running off your DC power and you've still got it plugged in, it'll restart it. So hence why I'll do it outside of it. Alright, so what it's doing, this bit here, this start bit here, is counting the clicks. So 1 click, 2 clicks. Or, on, off, on, off. No. Alright, so this bit here is the switch case. So if this click count equals 1, or if this click count equals 0, it's going to do something. So for 1, it's going to enable the on button and disable the off button. It's going to then create a string called PN. Now that PN is going to be what the port box selected value is. So when you open the application, you have to select in that combo box what the port number you want. All right, and then what it's going to do is going to tell the Arduino port that its port name is this PN, so port name. All right, then I've got another try catch, and now within that try catch, I've got if the Arduino port is open equals false. So if the port is closed, basically it'll open it, and then if it's 0, it's going to do the opposite. So it's going to make them, when you disconnect, it's going to disable the 2 buttons, and it's going to, if it's open, it's going to close it. Alright, so now I need to set some parameters for my serial port. Now to do that, I'm going to have to do it outside of all my buttons, just here. So what I'm going to do is go back to my window here. I'm going to click on my big window, then I'm going to go across here, and then what I can do is I can click through and find all the events. Now I want one called loaded. So by loaded, what's going to happen if I do this, bang, it creates this bit down here. Now this bit here is when the application loads and the window pops up, it's going to run this line of code. Now what I'm going to do is set some default parameters for the Arduino port. Now the things that the Arduino port's going to need to know is the speed it's running at and some timeout values. If you're waiting under a read line, for example, and it takes longer than 2 seconds, it will just fail out and continue on its code without crashing the program. Otherwise, what will happen is it'll just hang. So if you don't declare these timeouts, the computer will just hang. It'll just wait indefinitely for a command to come back from the Arduino. So it's important you put something there. So 2 seconds is ages. Like it should be almost instantaneous under your ability to recognize. All right. So baud rate, that's the speed. So when you program your Arduino, you might like 2400 or was 115,200 or something like that. For my case, my Arduino is programmed at 9600, so the baud rate for this application would be 9600. Now if you want it to use different speeds, you can also make another combo box on the other window and fill it with different baud rates that you want available, but that's not stored in memory anywhere, so you'd have to type them in. So like include certain things within the combo box. Alright, so we'll go through, make sure we haven't missed anything, and then we'll run it. Alright, so the first time I run it, my antivirus is going to catch it. So yours also might catch it if you use it. So it's got Avast, so I'll just pause the video quickly to... Yeah, so Avast does its thing and it lets me run the program after a few seconds. So what it does is it loaded and then killed it, and then it's going to bring it back to me. Yep. Alright. COM9, see I can select in there what my COM is. I can connect to it. And I can turn it off and on. So I'll turn on my webcam so you can see it work. I don't know if we can... Alright, to show you that it works, I've got a pin here. And I'll light up and down. Alright, so I'll quickly go through the Arduino code. So I'll just turn my webcam off. So there's not much in the Arduino code. You can see I've just got the serial port activated. I've got pin mode 13, so that was for the LED to flash. And then within the loop, I've declared a string, two strings, a read string and Q. So what this bit here is doing is it's while there's some serial bytes there available. What it's going to do, it's going to collect them all, and then it's going to keep adding them. So it's going to say, if the character C equals what it reads, what bytes available, and then it's going to check if it's a control character. If it's a control character, it's going to break. It's going to stop doing something. All right. So then then it breaks, and then read string will equal the character C plus the next character of C. So it's going to add them all together, and then when it gets to the control character, it stops. So it'll fail. It won't add the last one in. So then if Q will then equal that read string when it drops out, then I'm going to check what Q equals. So if Q equals on, right? So if the on command was sent, it's going to send down the serial port on. So it's received it. It's sent back the same message, and then it's going to, make the 13 pin high and then put the LED on. So if you wanted this to do something else, you can just put your code in here. Like if you want to have your relay go on, you'd put your relay pin there. Or if you want it to, get data, you would have your data get sent back at this point, and you could have the response equal your data, and you could, do something that way, or anything you want. All right. So if this helped you at all, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and thanks for checking out this far.